Hello, everybody. My name's Lucy May Constantini, and I'm speaking to you from South Wales in the United Kingdom. And I'm looking forward very much to leading this course for yogic studies, YS128, called Kal arippayar, Embodying the Cosmic Wind. And we'll be working through that in May, which is very exciting. So first of all, I thought it might be useful to describe what Kal arippayar actually is, because not everyone will be familiar with it. So it's a martial art from South India. Now, there are various martial arts that come from South India, and Kal arippayar has become a bit of an umbrella term to describe all of them. But actually, what we'll be looking at is actual Kal arippayar, which comes from the northern part of the southwestern state of Kerala in South India. And it's the part of Kerala that used to be called Malabar. So it borders Karnataka, and it's the very northern bit of it. So I thought, first of all, it might be helpful to see some images to just get a sense of what it feels like and what's involved in this practice. So bear with me while I bring those up for you. Great, so I think we're here. Fabulous. So this is CVN Karari Sangham at East Fort in Tiruvananthapuram. You might know it as Trivandrum, which is the old colonial name. And actually, these are the two people who I've worked with most during my fieldwork and my research. So on the left-hand side is G. Satyanarayanan Nair, who's now the Gurukal, so like the lineage holder of the CVN lineage at East Fort. And working with him is N. Rajashekaran Nair, who's the senior teacher. And as you might see, they're working with a weapon called the otta here. It's not very familiar. It's not very clear, sorry, but we'll learn more about that. And you can see the main deity of the Kalari installed in the back. And there are various other deities around the walls. And you can also see the weapons which are there. So it happens in this essentially like a training shrine that follows these tantric principles of space and of the deities and also of the understanding of the body, although there are other kinds of understandings of the body that we will figure out as we go. So this is just one wall of the Kalari when no one's there. That's the western wall, which is where most of the deities are installed. You can see the light coming through the upper windows, which also allows the air to circulate so that you don't get too stiflingly hot, hopefully. And this is the kind of pictures you often see when people are promoting Kalari. The Indian tourist board sometimes does it in this way. So this is the same too. So G. Satyanarayanan Nair up in the air, and with the sword extended is N. Rajashekaran Nair. So I'll stop sharing for a bit, and I will tell you a little bit about me and my research. So I've just come to the end of a doctoral thesis. I literally submitted it at the end of March. So the course is really going to be drawing on what that research is. Now, I came to this in a slightly unconventional way. So my background is as a dance artist. So back in the 90s, I did an undergraduate degree in English, in literature and language at King's College London. I did a master's in text and performance studies, so essentially theatre, again at King's, but also at RADA, which is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. And then I did my dance training at what was then the Laban Centre for Movement and Dance, and what is now called Trinity Laban, which is a big dance conservatoire. And then I worked for many years in dance, and my research was really looking at the confluence of my practices of martial arts and yoga and postmodern dance. And in 2002, I had the opportunity to take part in an international choreographic laboratory, it was called, in Bengaluru in South India, in Bangalore. And this is when I first encountered the Kalari, because Satyan Gurukal, the lineage holder I work with, he came and he taught us for a week. And the dancers I was working with, many of them had practiced Kal arippayar. Anyway, some years later, I was able to go back, but this was very much as a dance artist. So from 2010 onwards, I went regularly for several extended periods. And once when I was there in 2012, Satyan Gurukal suggested to me that we start a documentation project. I wasn't quite sure what that meant or what that involved, but off we started. And we started doing these interviews and recording answers to my questions and discussions, as well as me engaged in regular training. And that is essentially what became my doctoral thesis. So that became the PhD. In the meantime, I did a master's in South Asian Area Studies at SOAS. That was in 2017. And then from there, in 2019, I started at the Open University in the UK, funded by the Open Oxford-Cambridge Doctoral Training Partnership. That's very important. So I started my doctoral research there. And just before the pandemic, which wasn't ideal for a project that required international fieldwork, but we did get there in the end. And also an important part of this research was spending a few months at the École Française d'Extrême-Orient, the EFEO in Pondicherry, where I worked especially with S.A.S. Sharma, a scholar there. So we were looking at Kal arippayar texts, which are in Malayalam. So I guess that's my background. The methodology for this research is important, like how I came about it. So we talk quite a lot about decoloniality in the academy, which is unpicking a lot of the problematic power structures of people going from European countries originally, and then also North American countries, to other parts of the world that were colonized, and essentially extracting knowledge from them. So one of the interesting things about this particular project is essentially it's co-created. So it's co-created with the lineage holder of this Kal arippayar lineage. And also a strong part of my argument is that in studying practices that are embodied, it's important in this case to take account of the experience of the practitioners of these embodied practices. And actually with Kal arippayar, without doing this, it's really impossible to get the information. So we'll learn more about why this is through the course. So that is going to be divided into 4 modules, as those of you who've done yogic studies courses before will know. So the first module is going to be called The World of the Colories. And that really sets out what is the landscape in which this practice originated and developed, what role did it have in this society going way back. And we'll begin first of all by answering the question, like, what is a colory? What are these practices? What does it involve? Because it's not just a martial art, it's also a medical practice. And there's also a whole ritual system that goes with it. So there's lots to unpack in all of that. We'll also have a look particularly at how it fits into the Keralan religious landscape, and particularly its expression of Tantra, Kerala Tantra. Where does Kal arippayar fit in that? Because it's very much part of these confluences of South Indian tantric practices from the medieval period right up to the present. So, and we'll look at some of the Malayalam sources that give us the stories of the colories, that tell us some of the sociological information. There are some great stories about female warriors doing lots of exciting things. So yeah, we'll cover a lot of that. And then finally, we'll go inside metaphorically, inside a colory as it exists today. We'll have a look around the space and get a sense of what happens when you enter the space, what's there, what goes on. So the second module is called Body and Practice. So what is a colory body? The Kal arippayar has a very particular understanding of the body. So it hangs this understanding between other modules of the body that you might be familiar with. So because of its medical practice, it has a lot of Ayurvedic information, but it also has a very strong tantric ritual practice. So because of this, you have these different tantric Ayurvedic models of the body negotiating with one another. And Kal arippayar colories also have clinics which serve the general public. So you get people coming in with like aches and pains and sprains and bone breaks. So you're also dealing with the nitty-gritty of the biomedical body as we might understand it more conventionally. So we'll have a little bit of an explore of how these different models of the body come together and how they're understood. And then what does that mean in practice? So the practice of Kal arippayar, and this is where the title of the course comes in, Embodying the Cosmic Wind. Because what determines a practitioner's virtuosity is their mastery of vayu, wind or air, however you want to describe that. So what does that mean? And how do you access that in practice? And according to Kal arippayar masters, it's the codification of the practice that makes it a shastra. So we'll look a little bit at what are the structures that codify the practice and how do they relate back to these central principles, in particular, this embodying vayu. How does that work? Like, what do you do to do that? So that will be module 2. And then module 3 is on posture, and I'm calling it posture texts and contexts because I've got quite a few pieces of text that describe posture in Kal arippayar, with also descriptions from the master of the lineage explaining what these texts mean. So we'll look a little bit at how posture is understood in Kal arippayar, and for people who have an interest or a background in yoga, you might find this interesting comparatively. And also what other features define it. So for example, there are mantras that go with the postures in Kal arippayar, but who has access to these? How do they work? And also we'll look a little bit more widely at what kind of texts exist for Kalari and who has them, who can access them, and what do you need in order to understand them? How does this work? Because it's a very understudied area, and so we don't have a whole like ream of scholarship to refer to. So what can we do with what we have? And then the final module is on modes of transmission. So how is the knowledge understood? What is the nature of the knowledge? How does the structure take care of the knowledge? And what one of the characteristics of Kal arippayar which fit it within this tantric framework are its processes of initiation. So you're initiated through different stages of attainment and knowledge until finally a lineage holder is the only person who will have gone through all the initiations, and they are qualified then to pass on the lineage. So what are the processes for doing this? And how does mantra play into this? What other processes might be involved? And what is the role of secrecy in this? Is it a big deal? Is secrecy important? Or is it about being appropriately qualified? And if so, what does that mean? And then we'll round that up looking at the 20th century revival of Kal arippayar, because it had pretty much disappeared by the end of the 19th century. So what happened to revive it? How did that come about? How might it have changed the practice? Certainly it moved it out of this little area of Malabar, so it spread. And it also happened at a very similar time to when Krishnamacharya was essentially reinventing modern, as it became, yoga. So what was going on in the general zeitgeist there? So I think that pretty much covers it. So you don't need any prior knowledge of Kal arippayar. It's really open to anybody who has an interest in the moving body in the Indic context, whether that be from a place of practice or whether that be from a place of academic study. It's all welcome. And I'm intending to share different kinds of resources. So while there will be readings for people to engage with, I'm also going to dig out some film and other kinds of resources so that if you have a slightly different kind of learning style, hopefully there'll be some options for you to choose from. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this material with you, and hope to see you soon.